Hi, welcome back to another exciting video of Top Movies Recap. Today I'm going to recap a 2019 American superhero horror film called Brightburn. The film starts with Tori and Kyle Breyer as they attempt to conceive a child. There are a number of books on shelves indicating this, though they appear to be unsuccessful on every attempt. One day, in the middle of their latest attempt, Tori feels vibrations from something crashing outside. At first, she ignores, but then a louder shake turns the lights off. They look outside and see something has crashed in the woods. The film then flashes forward to a video of a child, Brandon, as he grows up. After seeing some of these clips, Tori is playing hide and seek with a slightly grown-up version of Brandon. However, when he turns 12 years old, he begins to change his behavior. He usually talks in an alien language and goes to the barn where his spaceship is locked in a storage. One day, while trying to mow the lawn, Brandon discovers his mysterious strength, and on his birthday, Brandon receives a rifle as a birthday gift from his Uncle No, only for Kyle to refuse to let him have it. However, Brandon demands the gun. With that, the family leaves in the midst of their celebration with a waitress looking on as they depart. The next morning, Brandon behaves strange and does not even listen to Kyle. He notices that Brandon is chewing on a fork without taking any damage to his teeth. Late on, Kyle takes Brandon outside for hunting and showing him his rifle, and explaining how his body's changing after Tori found some underwear ads underneath his bed. Later that night, Brandon is following Caitlin while listening to a slow rock tune. She notices that the music is coming from her laptop and she shuts it. However, she is nervous because he is watching her from a nearby window. Suddenly, her mother bursts in, asking what's wrong. She begins breathing nervously. Nova and Tori are looking for Brandon at the farm. The next day at school, Tori talks with Brandon's teacher about some mysterious drawings in his notebook. Tori asks him about these drawings, but he closes it and walks away. Back at the farm, Kyle notices that Brandon's startling some chickens, and when Tori and Kyle go outside to see, all the chickens have been murdered. Tori first thinks that a wolf did it, but Kyle thinks it is Brandon because he was out there earlier. The next day, Brandon takes part in a trust fall exercise. Caitlin is still nervous about what happened the other night, but she doesn't say anything. However, while playing, he falls to the ground after one classmate fails to catch him. He is okay, but Caitlin notes that she won't help him because he is a pervert. Brandon says it's a lie. The coach orders her to help him up, but he breaks her hand and sends her screaming. Then in the office, Tori explaining to Caitlin's mother that he is extremely sorry and accidents happen. The Caitlin's mother is not so sure and demands the sheriff arrest him, but he refuses. He will be in special sessions in school instead. Meanwhile, Brandon just sits, looking sad as they continue to argue. The mother still insists that a psycho gave birth to him, but Tori tries to defend him. After that, the family leaves, but not before Brandon gives her a menacing stare. Later that night, when Kyle and Tori was talking about him, and then something happening in the barn. Brandon is experiencing something glowing, possibly from the meteor. She rushes out to check on him, and she finds him levitating in the barn. He continues to chant, "Take the world," as she approaches him. He falls and his hand cuts on part of the meteor. She goes down to recover and talk him back down. He explains her that he came from the sky, and yells that she lied to him. Tori tells Kyle about the whole incident. Brandon screams and fires lasers from his eyes just because of anger. Later, he visits Caitlin in her bedroom as she types on her laptop. He requests her not to be scared and that she only knows just how special he is. She cries as he suddenly departs from there and leaving a flower behind for her. Meanwhile, when her mother is just closing up shop, she notices something. She walks out and sees some strange diagrams on the windows, similar to that of what Brandon drew in his book earlier. At the same time, the lights begin flickering and suddenly the windows shatter and she removes a piece of glass from her eye. When she looks around, she doesn't see anything, but she knows someone is there. She then grabs a baseball bat only to see a shadow figure fly by at rapid speed. She takes a swing but doesn't hit anything. She then retreats to the cooler in the back and locking the door. He tears the door off and looks at her before he charges and apparently kills her. The next morning, Brandon telling his parents everything is fine with how things were explained. Back at the diner, a police officer and his deputy investigate what happened the previous night. The police officer finds one of the diagrams on the window that Brandon drew in the school. Marilee, who is also a counselor, tries to talk to Brandon, but he is despondent in terms of explaining what's going on. The session goes nowhere and Marilee talks to the police about his behavior. At a bar, Kyle talks with his friends about Caitlin's hand and he starts to think his son is a monster. Back at home, Tori is doing things in the bathroom as the lights again flicker on and off quickly. Meanwhile, Brandon goes to Marilee's house and says he wants to talk to her. He also warns not to talk to the police as it is not good for anyone. Marilee tells him to go home and he leaves supposedly, but actually he stands outside her window and watches her text Noah. He then comes back in her house in his costume, but at the same time, No comes and finds him in the closet. He escorts him out and threatens to tell his parents about this all. They start to load up on No's truck, and when he tries to force Brandon into it, he's thrown up against the garage door. He gets up and drives away, but he's convinced that Brandon is following him. Suddenly, the truck out of control and loses power. He attempts to restart it, but Brandon appears in front of him. He lifts the truck off the ground and then suddenly sending it crashing down. No breaks his jaw as Brandon goes over to him. As he lays there dying, Brandon draws one of his symbols in the ground in his blood. That night, Kyle has a nightmare and sees how Tori first found the baby in the meteor and chooses to adopt him. However, it startles him when its eyes suddenly light up with lasers. After that, Kyle and Tori are called to the hospital, where Marilee is admitted. She explains No was killed and Brandon came to visit beforehand, which concerns Kyle. The next morning, when they give Brandon the news about No and he just says, okay, Kyle now wonders and blames Brandon of being there. Tori tries to control the situation, but Kyle just gets angrier. Suddenly, Brandon shoves him into the pantry, breaking the doors in the process. Tori sends him away. After that, Kyle finds a shirt with a little blood on it, but he manages to take it away without Brandon noticing. He then apologizes him for earlier incidents, but Brandon just says okay again. Later, Kyle explains to Tori about a shirt he found, but she refuses to accept what he's saying. Meanwhile, the sheriff takes a close look at the accident and again notices similarities with the diagram from the window and what was drawn on the ground. The next day, Kyle takes Brandon on a hunting trip. As they go, the sheriff visits Tori to explain what he's found with the photos. She doesn't tell him about Kyle and Brandon. Tori finds Brandon's notebook and notices the same diagram from the window and the road, along with other drawings like his outfit and glass in the waitress' eye, and several dead people along with the words, "Take the world." She then panics. Back in the woods, Brandon and Kyle follow some deer, and Kyle lets him walk ahead. Brandon investigates the tracks as Kyle attempts to shoot him. The bullet fires, but it just bounces off of Brandon's head. He shows a startled look as Kyle, who attempts to reload. Once he does, however, Brandon vanishes. Kyle runs in a panic, but Brandon, now hooded again, flies around and appears around him. He finally tackles him and forces him to sit up. Kyle tries to apologize, but Brandon suddenly fires his laser eyes that shoot through his skull, killing him. At the house, Tori tries to call Kyle, but to no response. After a while, Brandon finally answers, and Tori asks him about Kyle. Brandon explains he's gone and now he's coming home. He hangs up the call and begins flying through the house at a rapid pace, destroying it in the process. She calls 911 as he continues to fly around her. The sheriff and his deputies show up to see the house is devastated from Brandon's destruction. Tori starts to come out of the house as the sheriff calls out to her. However, before she can talk with him, Brandon rushes and rips him to shreds. Tori and the deputy run away inside the house. Tori goes upstairs to hide as the deputy raises her gun, looking for Brandon. She also calls for backup. Deputy walks around the house and sees Brandon appear in front of her. Tori continues to be quiet as Brandon looks around for her. She finally makes her way out the window and crashes to the ground. Tori rushes to the barn where the meteor is located. She finds the body of the waitress as she hides the shard and calls for Brandon. He shows up, hooded and all, and she explains that he means everything to her. She goes to take his hood off and he looks at her innocently. The two embrace and she prepares to stab Brandon with the shard. However, he catches her hand, forcing the shard out of it. Angry, he flies her into the air several hundred feet into the air. He gives her one last look, holds her out, and drops her to her death. As he levitates in air, an oncoming plane comes towards him and the screen fades to black. The next day, wreckage from the plane is shown on the ground with no survivors from the crash. It's reported that the plane crashed into the farmhouse with Kyle and Tori inside. Brandon sits there, eating a cookie with an innocent look on his face. During the end credits, we see cities devastated and millions dying by Brandon's hands. We hope you enjoyed our today's video. If you did like this video, smash that like button and subscribe to our channel to stay up to date with the latest and interesting videos.